timely, insightful, discussion and analysis of economic trends and markets. From Southern California to Sacramento, featuring business and political leaders, unique field reports. From Orange County and the campus of Chapman University, this is the Chapman Business Report.
And welcome back to the Chapman Business Reports, our weekly look at business, financial markets, and a special focus on the regional economies of Southern California. I'm Pete Weitzner. I head up the broadcast journalism program at the Dodge College of Film and Media Arts. It's part of Chapman University, but just a couple of blocks to the west of us here from the main campus. Just behind us houses the economist, Dr. Essie Adibi, for now going on 34 years. He and Dr. Jim Doty have been putting out their very influential regional and national economic forecast. The 34th comes up in December. You've been crunching the numbers.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
I look forward to that. It'll be at the Orange County Performing Arts Center. When we're done chatting about the current condition of the economy, we'll duck in our student feature stories, a terrific look, a kind of a preview look at the upcoming season for the Anaheim Ducks. Two big factors that could determine whether the Ducks improve upon last year's playoff appearance. Luke Sikora and Rajiv Melwani will have that for us. But let's start with the dismal science. We'll start with matters of the economy. Dismal has been the watchword for the last
but we
2
got
years.
few good numbers.
Off the ledge is how one economist. Is that
yes.
how you refer to the September jobs report? We're off the ledge.
Yes, because
it wasn't great.
No, we got the August number first.
No
and
good.
It was zero. It was zero. No job growth. So basically, you're saying, gee, where are we headed? And when September number came out, two things happened. One, it reported 103,000 jobs, payroll jobs, company hirings. And then they revised the August number to over 50,000 job generation, which basically what it suggests that economy at least is not headed toward recession, because the concern was after the job number for August flat, they said, gee, September, if it comes negative, and GDP has been so dismal, and those are the two main factors that gauges recession or no recession. They said,
and that's why we have a jobs report that's before Congress, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yes,
a jobs bill
proposed
to spend almost another $500 billion. But looking at the numbers, a little anomalous because you had 45,000 Verizon workers going back to work. So that's about a third of your private sector workforce.
Yeah, but if you even subtract, again, we care about the positive numbers. No, I'm not really excited about 103,000.
Because we have to have 200,000 to start to make a dent in the 9.1.
Exactly. We need about 125 to 150,000 job company hirings to basically absorb the new entry to the labor force, high school kids, college graduates. So if you don't get anything about 125 to 150, unemployment rate is not going to change. And in fact, unemployment rate based on that report stayed about the same, 9.1%. But the key is, you know, in economics, we look at the variables, is the trend that we watch very carefully.
New claims are down.
New claim is down, but roughly about 400,000 is still. Again, to get meaningful job recovery, it has to go under 400,000. Now, some people say, why are we having claim? You know, unemployment claim filed, new one. 400,000. That is nothing new. You know, even in good term, good economic condition, there is always some layoff, you know, labor market churning. So you would always have unemployment filing, but you want it around 300 to 350,000, indicative of more normal condition rather than distressed labor market. So that wasn't good news. But the key problem, as everybody knows, is underemployment.
16.5%.
Yeah, underemployment. That is, people are working on jobs on part-time basis, you know, because definition of employment is kind of ridiculous. If you work 1 hour for pay, they count you employed. But are you really surviving or not? That's a big question. Nonetheless, having said this, you know, if you look at what was going on in August and the numbers that came out for September, at least it's a sigh of relief that the direction is not changing. We're still growing, albeit very slowly. And we believe now, by the way, the GDP number should be pretty good for third quarter. You know, first quarter was practically zero, second quarter slightly over 1. We think third quarter should be over 2% or so.
We've had an inkling of midway. We record this late October. We've had some of third quarter earnings reports. They've been pretty good. There's 5 to 6 quarters up to it better, yes. But we're not falling off the. We're gonna look at some bank earnings. Google had a great quarter.
Oh, Google is taking advantage of. I mean, at the expense of all the print media. Google is taking
companies
advantage.
are advertising.
Yeah, but you know, there's a shift there also. You know, the companies, if you look at newspapers, you know, either local or national, they're shrinking. There's not that much ad in newspaper. Everybody's going online, and Google obviously is the king of online advertising.
Further to your third quarter, which you'd say will be strong, relatively strong, maybe over 2% growth. And for fourth quarter hiring, you expect better than 150,000?
I believe so. Remember, we had some headwinds, and we're still dealing with some of those residual.
We'll get to Europe in a bit.
Exactly. So if these headwinds disappear, you know, or ease off or fade away, we should do much better in the fourth quarter than third quarter, because you're going to seasonal hiring. And when you look at the seasonal hiring, based on what happened to September figures and back to school, we should have very good consumer spending. Again, everything is relative. Good consumer spending, and that should boost some hiring.
We'll get to the best month in 7. We'll get to retail sales, and we talked about car sales in our last show. They were very strong. But I just want a last word about jobs. It has never been so important to have an education to work in this country.
Exactly.
And especially in the backdrop of these Occupy Wall Street protests, largely fostered by unemployment. If you don't have a high school diploma, unemployment 15%. If you have a high school diploma, unemployment 10%. College diploma, 5%.
5%.
It's imperative to get.
There are two things going on. One is, as labor market becomes competitive, employers have much bigger pool of potential employees. So who are they going to hire when a college graduate is competing with somebody who just has a high school, you know, degree? So obviously they have better opportunity to find a job. And don't forget, you know, our society has changed. Skills are becoming very important. And if you look at earning power over the life term of an individual with a college degree, if you get all those extra pay, it is still pays to go to the college, because the skill is becoming ever more important to secure a job and to keep it.
Governor of the Bank of England says that the world, I mean, we know about Europe, is facing possibly the worst economic crisis in history.
That's going a little too far. I mean, the worst would be Great Depression, obviously, and some of the statistics.
That was 30% unemployment.
You're exaggerating. You became like a Bank of England.
30%?
23%. You're close. I mean, those numbers are horrible anyway. So we had a huge unemployment rate. GDP decline contracted for almost 2-3 years. So we're not in the same shape. But if you look at the financial problem we're dealing with, the problem, especially in Europe, sovereign debts, yes, this is probably the worst scenario, worst picture that you could see is developing around the world. You know, Europe is in trouble, and we are in trouble too by having huge deficit and debt. So yes, in that sense, it's the worst problem we're dealing with.
And you've said several times, the Japan disasters and recovery, higher oil and gas prices, the problems of state and local government and federal government, the housing doldrums, not all that pales or is not as significant as the problem of the sovereign euro debt, Greece, Italy.
Exactly, because you see, the problem is, like, let's just start with each one of those things. Japan problem. Sure, it was a big, huge setback for production, manufacturing, and otherwise, but the rebuilding is going to boost economic activities in Japan, and Japan's trading partners are going to benefit. If you look at Libyan and oil situation, Libya, you know, the situation is being more or less resolved in terms of political sense, but of course we need to have a stability there. But we're getting some oil production. A big firm in France and one Italian firm, they went back, they're producing.
Prices for now seem to have stabilized.
Stabilized, and we still have problem because the Brent crude is roughly 115, and that's too high. But those two problems are fading away. But when you come now, you name state and federal government, both of those are facing problem, and they're not really doing anything fundamental about it.
Numbers came in, and again, 1.3.
1.3, and that's the second highest deficit that we had. The highest one was 1.4 trillion about 2 years ago. So we still have that huge deficit, huge debt, and we don't know what's going to come out of the super commission that is supposed to come up with some solution. And then you're dealing with Europe, which is not that much economic problem, it's a financial problem, but we shouldn't forget, in a mixed economy or capitalist economy, banking system is extremely important. If it's not functioning, the economy will not function.
As we sit here the last couple of weeks, we've had a mini re-rally on Wall Street, largely because there's renewed optimism about the Euro bailout plan.
It is a yo-yo, you know. I mean, a good news comes out, the market rallies, the bad news come out.
Are they stumbling into the right idea where the banks take a haircut and they have this fund? And
they're moving in the right direction. You know, they established a fund that they call it, I think, European Financial Security Facility.
EFSF.
Exactly. So they came up with almost $240 billion funding. Then they bumped it up just recently to over $400 billion. They want to leverage it and generate more funding available to these sovereign banks that they need money. So basically they can borrow. But it's still, they have to, everybody has to sign on it. They did. Finally, they approved it. But now the question is, how do you shore up the banking system? You know, these funds are mainly used to support sovereigns, countries, debt borrowing.
Right.
Now, what do? Is still you have huge sum of money that would potentially be lost by banks all over Europe, and with the side effect for us. So they have to come up. See, their problem is, and it's very sad, but it's understandable. They know what to do eventually, but there's so much national interest involved on the part of each country, and to some extent they say, why should we do this? Why should we do this? Stronger countries. And they have to realize if they don't do it, they have a lot to lose. For example, if they kick out Greece out and say, okay, you're not part of Eurozone, their exchange rate is estimated, the new money of Greece would be 60% less than euro. And if Germany, for some reason, go out, their exchange rate is going to be 40% higher than what it is. What it does is...
It's an exporting country.
Exporting country. I mean, they won't be able to sell as much, so they're going to get hurt badly. So they have to come up with something, and unfortunately, they don't move as fast.
In a political season.
But that's what it is.
So back home, retail sales, as I mentioned, best in 7 months?
That was excellent. You know, last show that we taped, you remember we were talking about car sales.
Which were 13 million annually, which is a good...
Very good number, coming off of, you know, roughly under 10 million annually. And then, more importantly, see, we knew car sales is good, so retail sales...
Ex-auto was up 0.6.
Exactly. When you get the auto out, you say, okay, did people buy anything else but auto? And they did. You know, it was across the board, it was a good number. Whether you look at the apparel, you know, electronic equipment, and that is very good because whether we like it or not, our economy is still 70% is consumers, and consumer spending is highly important for economic activity.
And what's interesting is that the consumer has spent the last 3 years becoming very frugal, which I guess obviously has some good parts to it.
Yeah.
Credit card delinquencies are almost at an all-time low. They're only 3%.
Yeah.
So maybe they're getting ready to spend again.
Yeah, there is. We have seen actually borrowing on credit card. Delinquencies is going down, borrowing is increasing. So consumers are, you know, 2 years ago, they basically became cash transaction. If you don't have money, don't charge it.
Well, especially if you're going to get charged $5 a month to use your debit card.
Yeah, so now what's happening, there's a little bit of more consumer spending, a little bit more consumer borrowing, and at the same time, we see delinquencies are going down.
Give me your take. Here's just a few companies in with third quarter earnings. I know you follow the banks very closely. JP Morgan, one of the biggest. Their profit was down or flat. The revenue was way down. Their stock's off 25%. Citigroup, their profit was up, but it was a one-time item, sort of, and their revenue's down. What's going on with the banks?
Banks are losing revenue. You know, lots of people hate banks. You know?
Lots these days.
And you know, Dodd and Frank, you know, the regulation basically tied their hand in terms of generating so many different
those swap
revenues.
Fees, that's what we're seeing?
Swap fees went down. Used to be 44 cents. It went down to 24 cents. And then not just that, like overdraft charges. You know, they could have charged you overdraft 3 times in one day if you wrote 3 bad checks. So now it's a little bit of more restriction there, what you can do. So all of that thing is getting the revenue down, and activities are lower. So if you look at JP Morgan, not only their profit went down, I mean, profit went up, but the revenue part of it was lower. If you look at Citibank, the revenue was lower. The profit was a little bit better, but as you said, it was a one-time thing. It's accounting gimmick. They basically reserved less for bad debt. So that was part of it. And Wells Fargo was absolute disappointment because the revenue went down and profit was okay. So banking sector, and that again goes back, if we don't have a strong banks, they don't lend. I mean, they have to fix those bad loans. But the good part is all of the banks are saying that the problem with mortgages are stabilizing. That's a good news. That is, they were seeing constantly, higher default and higher foreclosures. It's a stabilizing, and that should bring more stability to the banking system, leading to a little bit easing on lending standard, which would be a good news for consumers.
Google revenue up almost 30%.
That's exception. And Apple is going to be, now and maybe next quarter. I mean, they're going to report. These are special cases.
Right.
But if you look at the banking, financial sector, and most analysts also, they say they need some more time to repair and to come out as strong and show decent earnings.
But again, we record this late October. There could be some congressional action, or already has been, on the Obama American Jobs Act, and that they ratified those trade deals, which I know you like. But the bigger parts are the payroll tax cuts for business and for consumers, additional payroll tax cut, the infrastructure spending. What's your gauge? It got voted down in total, so it'll break it up. And what might we get?
Actually, it's funny, how politics work. It's we had a stimulus package of $887 billion, and this one is more or less is another stimulus.
Right.
So it's a stimulus, plan number 2, and they called it what? Job Act. So
yes. But the other one was the American Economic Recovery Act.
Yeah, but if you look at the composition of it, it's pretty much like the other one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much
we
of a
hope
change
without
here.
the favors.
Yeah, there's not much of a change. What they're proposing.
There's some transfer payments in there.
There's lots of transfer payments. What they're doing is basically they want to cut down our payroll taxes. We pay 6.2%.
You like that? Now it's like 4.2.
It is 4.2 now, but if this passes, this new stimulus package, it's going to go to half. So 6.2 becomes 3.1. So it's going to even give bigger boost for 2012. But see, let me give first my opinion over the whole thing, then we can analyze it. I would have loved, if we want to do this, again, big if, I would have loved to see it all on infrastructure. And if you look at the infrastructure component of
it's only $75 billion. It's not even a fifth of it.
It's not 1/5 of it. That is where you really get a boost, both in terms of spending, job hiring, economic activities. Now, that's disappointment, and that's very similar to what happened with the first stimulus. It was only a quarter of it was on infrastructure. You remember shovel-ready projects and so forth. So let's go back now. What are the components? Only a quarter or fifth is infrastructure. About $175 billion. That's the large sum, which is basically cut in Social Security from 6.2 to 3.1. Now, you would get some boost out of that.
You make 50 grand, that's 1,500 more in your...
It is some...
You make 100 grand, that's 3 grand more.
But that's about it.
It has a cap.
It has a cap of 106,000. After 106,000, nobody pays payroll taxes. So that would give us a boost, but is it going to be dollar for dollar? Probably not. Because again, some people might save, might pay down debt, using... that has a good chance of passing. I think so.
Will boost GDP in 2012.
It would boost GDP, yeah. It has a good chance because, as you know, the Senate knocked down the whole package.
Right.
And now the president is pursuing it on piecemeal approach. And one component that I think probably would pass is aids to schools and states and local government. Because I think when you look at it from politicians' point of view, they're going to have a hard time to go back to their constituencies and say, we didn't help teachers and firefighters and police. So that probably has a good chance of passing.
Just a few minutes, I want to have some quick things. Probably not enough time to talk about Operation Twist. Probably need a whole show for that. This is the latest Fed gambit to keep the economy going. Mortgage rates have moved up first time, back above 4%. And maybe I take that as a good sign. I know time honored is that when rates move up, people are getting off the dime, they're buying homes.
No, but you see, the rates went down too low for external factors. It wasn't really economic factors. All the European problem basically suggested to people that US is in trouble. Europe is in trouble, but US in relatively better shape than Europe. So people have started putting money in our treasuries. And when they buy our treasuries, 10-year bond, 5-year bonds, they bring the interest rates down. So temporarily, 10-year bond hit like 1.75% on a 10-year loan. But now it's back to about 2.2, 2.25, which means mortgage rates went over 4%. I think actually the direction probably is headed higher down the road.
I see activity picking up though.
The activities, the refinancing is going through, and some purchases are kicking in. And at the same time, I think the market realizes 10-year bond, because that's tied to the mortgage rate. At 2.25, I mean, it's below inflation rate. You're not getting any real return. So that 10-year bond, as it goes higher, mortgage rates are going to go higher.
Last item, what's your latest take on our state's finances?
It's trouble. It's trouble. The revenue, you know, when June we came up with our new fiscal budget and new
fiscal year starts July 1st.
Exactly. They estimated the revenue is going to be better by $4 billion than what was previously anticipated. I don't think that's going to come through. It's going to be at best maybe $2 billion, you know, higher level. So it means we're going to have a deficit. And come January, because that's when the governor has to come with his January budget for next fiscal year, we're going to be dealing with the same problem. Same deficit, and again the issue of whether we should cut the spending, whether we should raise taxes, which is not good. Another additional uncertainty out there that businesses are facing.
I'm sure that's of course, this will be factored into your 34th annual forecast, which we look forward to. We'll get a preview of that in the next few weeks and have more with the boss in upcoming shows. Dr. Essie Adibi, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And when we come back, you're a hockey fan. I know you're a big basketball fan. Your wife's a big basketball fan.
Yes.
Tough these days. I don't know that you can have much to watch. Hockey fan?
I don't watch it as much.
Gotta go. The key is to go. I'm an old New York Ranger fan, adopted the Ducks, and two of my terrific students, Luke Secura and Rajiv Melwani, will have a preview for you of the Anaheim Ducks season, specifically a season that might hinge on two of the star players when we get back on the Chapman Business Report. Welcome back to the Chapman Business Report. It's that time again for our fine student feature stories. This time around, hockey nuts Luke Secura and Rajiv Melwani take a look at a preview of the Anaheim Ducks season.
Well, it's an exciting day here in Anaheim, California at the Honda Center as the Anaheim Ducks officially start their training camp for the 2011-2012 NHL hockey season. Now, it's been over 4 years since this team won the Stanley Cup, but with Teemu Selanne re-signing and a healthy goalie in Jonas Hillers, it looks like this team could be a force to be reckoned with this NHL season.
I really think that Jonas has to do what everybody else is doing. He has to participate in training camp, play as he's been playing for the last couple of months in Europe. He's been participating in goaltending schools and clinics, and he's just got to continue to go out there as any other player. If he finds that he has issues, then I think he has to indicate that to us. Us as a coaching staff, we're going to treat him like a veteran player. Obviously, we're going to pose the question more often than we have before, specifically because of last year. Right now he's 100%, and we don't expect that would change. Yeah, it's always great to see him. I thought today, you know, is a real test for him because he, again, I don't know, is this training camp 22 for him? You know, I'm sure he's not enjoying the first day of training camp for the 21st or 22nd time. And it's special to see him. It's nice to see the ovation that he does get and the connection he has with the fans. It was nice to see that we had, you know, over 1,000 people here today, and I thought the players responded, and it was a nice show of affection both from our players towards our fans and our fans towards our players.
All we need to do now is wait for the season to begin. It's only a few weeks away. One thing's for sure, this is just one of many exciting days to come here at Honda Center. For Chapman News, I'm Luke Secura with Rajiv Melwani on camera.
All right, it's early, but early indications are very good, especially for Jonas Hillers. He's played every game in the first four, a .934 save percentage, recorded a shutout. The illness that he had, the vertigo symptoms, obviously have subsided, and the Ducks are third in the league in points against. So a good start, and Selanne just picked up his first assist. Very popular hockey player, and a great guy, gives back to the community. Well, that'll do it for the Chapman Business Report on this episode. My thanks, as always, to the good doctor, the great economist, Essie Adibi. Very much looking forward to their 34th annual, he and Jim Doty, economic forecast. And always to Jeff Cole, class of 2001, Jeff Cole Productions. They put on the Chapman Report. Wyan Westra, his fine assistant. Thank you very much for watching the Chapman Business Report. Back again next week with another look at business, financial markets, and a special focus on the regional economies of Southern California. I'm Pete Weitzner.
Funding for this program was provided by Chapman University.